Rylan was a human merchant who lived by luck and lies. He traveled through forgotten trade routes in the empty corners of the galaxy. Most days he searched for old ships, wrecks, or junk he could sell for credits. He was not rich, not brave, and not famous. He was just a man trying to survive in a cold and endless space. That day, his radar picked up something strange near a dying star. A shipwreck was drifting slowly, half broken and silent. It looked old and royal, shining faintly with gold markings and strange symbols. Rylan frowned, checking his scanners again. There were no life signs, no active signals, only a weak energy source deep inside. He licked his dry lips and whispered, "Jackpot." If the wreck belonged to one of the noble houses, its parts could make him rich, but it also meant danger. Royal ships never traveled alone. Still, greed was stronger than fear. He turned his small ship toward the wreck and began docking carefully. When he stepped inside, the air smelled like burnt metal and silence. The walls were covered with strange alien carvings. Lights flickered like dying fireflies. He moved through the corridors, hearing only the echo of his own boots. It felt like walking through a tomb. In one room, he found strange weapons, shining crystals, and pieces of broken armor. He took some, but his scanner beeped again. It showed a signal deeper inside the ship, a single strong pulse, steady and alive. Curiosity pushed him forward. He reached the main cargo bay and stopped. In the center of the room stood a large metallic chest. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Smooth, curved, glowing faint blue, humming softly like it was breathing. There were royal crests carved on its surface, the mark of the House of Vurath. Even a fool would know this was forbidden treasure. Rylan hesitated. He whispered to himself, "If I take this, I could buy a new ship, maybe a new life." But something in the air felt heavy, like the room itself was watching him. Still, his hands reached for the chest. He touched the lock and felt a soft vibration under his palm. Then the chest clicked open with a sigh. Inside was not treasure, not gold, not jewels, but a small alien child. He was curled up, pale skin glowing softly, with silver veins running across his arms. His breathing was weak, but he was alive. Rylan stepped back in shock. "What in the stars?" he whispered. The child stirred slightly, opening one bright eye, glowing like liquid light. Then he fell back into sleep. Rylan's heart raced. He checked his scanner again. It was the same signal he had followed. This was the source, a living being, hidden in a royal chest. Before he could think what to do, his ship's alarm went off. A voice from the communicator spoke. "Attention, unknown vessel. This area is under royal investigation. Any salvage found from the wreck of the Vurath line must be reported immediately." Rylan froze. They were close, maybe minutes away. He looked at the chest, then at the child. If the Royal Patrol found him here, they would take everything, and if the child was part of the Vurath family, they might kill Rylan for touching him. He had two choices, run or die. He made his choice fast. He closed the chest, carried it back to his ship, and undocked before the patrol could arrive. Engines roared, the small merchant ship speeding away through dark space. Behind him, the wrecked royal ship burned quietly near the dying star. On his ship, the chest glowed softly, as if it was alive. Rylan stared at it, feeling something strange in his chest. Fear, curiosity, and a small spark of something he had not felt in years. "Hope," he whispered to himself. "What are you, little one?" But the chest said nothing. Only the hum of the engines filled the silence. Rylan didn't sound. To know that his life had just changed forever. He didn't know that the child inside that chest would make him a target for every power in the galaxy. All he knew was that he couldn't turn back now, and somewhere in the cold dark of space, the story of a human and an alien child had just begun. The stars outside Rylan's ship looked calm, but his heart was not. He kept glancing at the glowing chest sitting in the corner of his cargo bay. Every few seconds, it made a soft hum like a heartbeat. He had seen strange things in his life, machines that talked, moons that bled gas, but never a living child hidden inside royal treasure. Rylan paced back and forth, thinking what to do. If he reported this to the Galactic Patrol, they would take the child away. And if he kept him, every bounty hunter in the quadrant would be after his head. He rubbed his tired eyes and sighed. "Why did I open that damn chest?" he muttered. Suddenly, the humming stopped. The lid of the chest moved slightly, and a faint light spilled out. Rylan froze. The air grew warm, and then the child's voice broke the silence. A soft whisper, weak and trembling. "Where am I?" The lid opened completely, and the small alien child slowly sat up. His skin shimmered like silver under light, and his eyes glowed softly blue. He looked fragile, but something about him felt powerful, ancient even. Rylan stepped closer, trying not to startle him. "You're safe, kid," he said gently. "You're on my ship." The child blinked, confused. He spoke again, his words mixed with strange alien tones. "You are human." Rylan nodded. "Yeah, the unlucky kind," he said with a small smile. The child's eyes darted around full of fear. "My ship, my guards, where are they?" Rylan hesitated. He couldn't tell him the truth. The wreck was dust now, and everyone on it was gone. He took a slow breath and said, "There was an accident. Your ship was destroyed." The child lowered his head, his small hands trembling. For a moment, the lights in the ship flickered as if reacting to his emotion. Rylan stared, confused. He had seen machines fail, but never because of someone's sadness. The child whispered again, "I am Alien, son of Varath." The name hit Rylan like a hammer. He had heard of the Varath family, the rulers of half the Orion Belt, the bloodline that owned entire fleets. That meant the boy wasn't just noble, he was royalty. And Rylan, a poor human trader, was now holding a galactic heir. He tried to stay calm. "All right, Alien," he said. "You're safe here, but you need to rest." Alien shook his head slowly. "They will come," he whispered. "The ones who attacked my ship." Rylan frowned. "Attacked? You mean it wasn't an accident?" Alien looked up with frightened eyes. "They wanted to end my line. They said I was too dangerous." Rylan stepped back. He didn't understand, but he could feel the weight in the boy's voice. Dangerous or not, Alien was just a scared child, and something inside Rylan couldn't leave him. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was fate. He sighed and said, "Well, if they come, they'll have to go through me first." The boy tilted his head, studying him. "No one has ever said that to me before," he said softly. His voice trembled, but his eyes were curious, almost hopeful. Rylan shrugged, pretending not to care. "Don't get used to it, kid," he said. "I'm no hero." But deep down, he knew he couldn't hand the boy over. He had done selfish things in his life, lied, stolen, even smuggled illegal tech. But leaving this child to die didn't feel right. It was strange. He had found many things in wrecks before, gold, weapons, rare machines. But this time, he had found something different, something alive, something that made him feel human again. As Alien drifted into sleep, Rylan covered him with a blanket. The child's breathing slowed, and the ship lights dimmed softly, as if they obeyed his dreams. Rylan stared for a long moment, wondering what kind of creature the boy truly was, and what kind of storm was coming for them both. Suddenly, the ship's monitor beeped. An incoming transmission. He checked the screen, and his blood ran cold. It was a royal broadcast repeating across all channels. "All salvage from the wreck of the House of Varath is property of the Crown. Anyone found withholding royal assets will be executed without trial." And then a face appeared, an alien officer with eyes like ice. He spoke clearly. "The missing heir must be found, dead or alive." Rylan turned off the screen, his heart pounding. He looked at the sleeping boy and whispered, "Guess that makes you my biggest problem." But then, after a pause, he smiled faintly. "Or maybe, my only reason to fight." Outside, the stars burned brighter. The universe didn't care about one man and one child. But sometimes, the smallest spark in the coldest space could start a fire strong enough to change everything. And in that moment, Rylan, the lonely merchant, became something new. He became a protector, even if he didn't know it yet. Rylan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the cockpit, staring at the stars that stretched like silver rivers across the dark. The words from the royal broadcast echoed in his head. The missing heir must be found, dead or alive. He looked at the small child sleeping in the bunk behind him, his silver skin glowing faintly under the dim lights. Alien looked peaceful, innocent, unaware that half the galaxy now wanted his head. Rylan leaned back, whispering to himself, "What did I get myself into?" He had smuggled weapons before, stolen from rich miners, even tricked bounty hunters. But this was different. They said it wasn't about money anymore. This was about life and death, and he wasn't sure whose. The next morning, or whatever counted as morning in deep space, Alien woke up. His first words were soft. "We are moving." Rylan nodded, checking the scanner. "Yeah, kid, I'm trying to keep us off the patrol routes." Alien tilted his head. "They will find us. They always find us." Rylan sighed. "Not if I can help it." He spent hours rerouting through old smuggler paths, broken wormholes, and forgotten asteroid tunnels. Everywhere he went, new alerts appeared on the galactic network. Royal patrols scanning ships, bounty hunters forming search grids. One even offered 10,000 credits for any clue about a human vessel possibly harboring the Varath heir. Rylan cursed under his breath. Even the poorest miner would sell them out for that kind of money. He switched his ship to stealth mode, cutting the main power and running only on hidden thrusters. They drifted through a silent belt of frozen rocks. Outside, ice chunks floated like ghosts and the silence felt heavy. Alien sat beside him, watching the stars with wide eyes. Rylan glanced at him. "You ever been out here before?" Alien shook his head slowly. "My world was bright and full of noise," he said. "This feels lonely." Rylan gave a small laugh. "Get used to it, kid. Loneliness is free out here." For a while, neither spoke. Then Alien asked, "Why are you helping me?" The question hit Rylan harder than he expected. He stared at the empty screen, searching for an answer. Finally, he said, "Because no one helped me when I needed it." Alien looked down, silent. Sometimes simple words carried the weight of entire lifetimes. Suddenly, the ship alarm beeped. 3 short tones. Rylan checked the radar, and his heart sank. A fast-moving patrol ship had locked onto them. They had found his trail. "Hold on," he shouted. "Power." "Ing the engines." The ship roared to life, engines glowing red as he darted between the asteroids. Lasers sliced through the darkness, missing by inches. Alien gripped the seat tightly, his eyes wide with fear. "Can't shake them," Rylan muttered, pulling hard on the controls. The patrol kept firing, trying to disable his engines. Then suddenly, every screen on his ship flickered, and the controls froze. "Not now," Rylan shouted, slamming the panel. Alien closed his eyes and whispered something in his native tongue. The air around him shimmered with light, and the ship's systems suddenly rebooted. Rylan stared in disbelief as the engines burst back to life. He steered sharply and dived into a nearby debris field, disappearing from radar. For a full minute, they drifted silently, hiding behind the wreckage of an old mining vessel. Rylan's hands were shaking as he looked at the boy. "What did you just do?" he asked, his voice trembling. Alien looked tired, his eyes dimming. "I asked the ship to wake up," he said softly. Rylan blinked. "You asked it." The boy nodded weakly. "Machines listen to my kind if they choose to." Rylan didn't understand how, but one thing was clear. This child wasn't just royal blood. He was something more. Something powerful. Maybe that's why they wanted him dead. Maybe that's why he couldn't abandon him. He leaned back and laughed quietly, a tired, broken laugh. "Well, kid," he said, "if the galaxy wants you, they'll have to catch us first." Alien gave a small smile. "You are strange for a human." "Yeah," Rylan said. "Been told that before." Hours later, they landed on a small hidden station called Greypoint, a black market hub floating inside a gas cloud. It was a place where no questions were asked, and no one cared who you were. Rylan knew someone there who might help them disappear, an old friend named Sarah. As he shut down the engines, he looked at the boy. "Stay close and don't talk to anyone," he said. Alien nodded silently, his glowing eyes reflecting the lights of the station. As the ship door opened and the smell of smoke and oil filled the air, Rylan had no idea that this place, this meeting, would decide their fate. The hunt had truly begun, and from this moment on, the galaxy would never forget the name of the human who dared to steal the air of Vurath. Greypoint Station was a place where the laws of the galaxy didn't exist. It floated inside a swirling gas cloud, hidden from scanners, alive with flickering lights and quiet danger. Merchants, smugglers, bounty hunters, and thieves all walked the same narrow halls, pretending not to see each other. Rylan had been here before, many times, but this time felt different. He wasn't here for profit, he was here to keep a child alive. Alien followed close behind him, his hood pulled low to hide his glowing skin. The boy walked quietly, his eyes wide as he looked at the strange creatures passing by. They whispered to each other in different languages, and every stare felt like a blade. Rylan leaned down and whispered, "Keep your head down, and don't touch anything." Alien nodded softly, clutching the edge of Rylan's jacket. They reached a small metal door at the end of a narrow hallway. Rylan knocked twice, then once again, a secret code from long ago. The door opened with a hiss, and a tall woman stepped out, her hair silver like frost. Her name was Captain Sarah, and she was as dangerous as she was beautiful. She smiled when she saw Rylan. "You're either brave or stupid to come here again," she said. Rylan grinned weakly. "Can I be both?" Her eyes shifted to Alien, studying the boy carefully. "Who's the kid?" she asked. Rylan hesitated. "A friend," he said simply. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you make friends, Rylan?" He sighed. "Since yesterday." She laughed softly and stepped aside. "Fine. Come in before someone sells your location." Inside her ship, the air smelled like oil and spice. Sarah poured him a drink while Rylan explained, at least part of it. He didn't mention the royal blood or the bounty, only that he found a lost child in a wreck and needed safe passage. Sarah listened quietly, tapping her fingers on the table. Finally, she said, "You know, the galaxy's been whispering about a missing noble kid." Her eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Rylan forced a smile. "Just rumors," he said. But Alien was staring at his cup, and the liquid inside began to ripple. Sarah's eyes widened. "What the?" Before Rylan could stop him, Aelion lifted his hand slightly, and the small pieces of metal on the table started floating. They circled gently, glowing faintly blue. Then the boy blinked, and everything fell back with a soft clang. The room went silent. Sarah looked at Rylan, her voice low. "What is he?" Rylan didn't answer, but the fear in his eyes said enough. Sarah stood up, pacing slowly. "Do you have any idea what you're carrying?" she said. Rylan shook his head. "He's just a kid." "Just a kid," Sarah snapped. "That kid can bend machines like they're toys." She looked at Alien again, softer this time. "Your kind. They were made, not born, weren't they?" Alien looked up, his small voice trembling. "We were born through science and spirit. My ancestors built us to be one with creation, to heal, to guide, to connect. But when they saw our power, they feared us." He touched his chest, the faint light glowing beneath his skin. "They called us noble blood because our hearts carry the code of control." Rylan frowned. "Control of what?" Alien looked straight into his eyes. "Of everything." His voice echoed in the metal room, soft but powerful. Rylan felt a chill crawl down his spine. He suddenly understood why the royals wanted him dead. Alien wasn't just an heir. He was a weapon, a living key to machines and systems beyond imagination. Sarah exhaled slowly. "You're both in deeper trouble than I thought." She walked to a small console, typing quickly. "I can help you hide," she said, "but it'll cost." Rylan nodded. "Anything." She turned, eyes hard. "Anything might not be enough." As they prepared to leave, Alien touched a broken drone on her shelf. It flickered to life, hovering gently, its sensors glowing. Sarah watched in silent awe. The boy whispered, "It's lonely." Rylan didn't know if he was talking about the machine or himself. Later that night, when Alien slept in the corner, Rylan sat alone in the cockpit, thinking. Every time he looked at the boy, he saw something more. Something powerful yet fragile. He remembered his own childhood, the hunger, the cold, the loneliness. He had always told himself that life was about surviving, not saving. But now, watching this strange child breathe softly, he wasn't sure anymore. He whispered into the quiet cabin. "You're not just royal blood, are you? You're something the galaxy isn't ready for." Outside, lightning from the gas cloud flashed across the stars, and far away, ships were moving. The hunters had found their trail again. The storm was coming, and Rylan had no idea how close it was. The ship drifted silently through the gas clouds of Greypoint, hiding like a shadow among storms. Rylan sat in the cockpit, staring at the radar, watching for any sign of pursuit. So far, nothing. But he knew better than to relax. The galaxy never forgot a man who stole from a royal house. Behind him, Alien was asleep again, his small frame wrapped in a blanket. Even in sleep, faint light pulsed through his veins, gentle and rhythmic like a heartbeat. Rylan watched for a while, wondering how a child could carry something so powerful inside him. He didn't know if it was a gift or a curse, maybe both. Sarah entered the cockpit, her boots echoing softly against the metal floor. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," she said. Rylan smirked. "I probably haven't." She crossed her arms. "You're in over your head, Rylan, and you know it." He glanced at her. "Since when did that ever stop me?" Sarah sighed, leaning against the wall, her silver hair catching the dim light. "You could walk away," she said. "Give the kid up and disappear." Rylan's face hardened. "Not an option." Her eyes softened slightly. "You always had a death wish." He smiled faintly. "Guess I found a reason to use it." But as he spoke, Sarah's hand brushed her wristband. A silent signal. Far above Greypoint, a beacon lit up for a brief second, invisible to the naked eye. She turned away before Rylan could see the guilt flicker across her face. She had made her choice long before he arrived, a bounty that large could buy a new fleet, a new identity, even a new life. Hours later, Rylan was running system checks when he noticed something strange. His ship's comms were open, broadcasting a low-frequency signal. He frowned, tapping the controls. "What the hell?" Before he could react, red lights flashed and alarms screamed. Alien woke with a start, eyes glowing bright. "They found us," he said. "Out the viewport, ships emerged from the mist. Sleek, black, royal interceptors. Rylan cursed. "Sarah? What did you do?" Sarah appeared at the doorway, her blaster in hand, her face pale. "I didn't mean for it to go this way," she said. "They promised no one would get hurt." Rylan's voice turned sharp. "You sold us out." Sarah looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Rylan, I had to." He took a step toward her, fury burning in his chest. But before he could speak, the ship shook violently as tractor beams locked on. The hull groaned as the royal forces pulled them in. Rylan grabbed Alien's hand, trying to run toward the escape pod, but the door sealed shut automatically. Metal clamps snapped into place, locking everything down. Alien's eyes glowed brighter, fear turning to power. Energy rippled through the room, and lights exploded overhead. Rylan shouted, "No, stop, you'll kill yourself!" But the boy's voice broke through the noise, trembling. "They can't take me again." The ship's systems went wild, screens flickering, engines roaring without command. For a moment it felt like the whole station would rip apart. Then a bright flash filled the air. Alien collapsed, his power spent. Rylan caught him before he hit the floor. Outside, the interceptors surrounded them completely. It was over. When Rylan opened his eyes again, he was in a cold cell. The air smelled like steel and chemicals. His wrists were bound with magnetic cuffs, and his head ached. Across from him, behind another glass barrier, Alien sat quietly, his face pale and bruised. Guards in dark armor stood watch nearby, their weapons humming softly. Rylan slammed his fists against the glass. "Let him go. He's just a kid." One of the guards smirked. "That's no kid, human. That's a weapon." The words cut deep. Rylan's throat tightened. "He's alive. He's more than that." But the guard laughed and walked us away, leaving silence behind. Hours passed, or maybe days. Rylan lost track of time. He could hear faint noises, scientists talking, machines humming, and sometimes Alien crying softly. Every sound tore at his heart. He couldn't do nothing. Not now, not after everything. Then one night, a familiar voice came through the vent above his head. "Rylan," it whispered. He looked up, eyes wide. "Sarah," her voice trembled. "They're taking him to the genetic chamber. They're going to erase him." Rylan felt his blood run cold. He stood up, his voice low but fierce. "Tell me how to stop them." There was a pause, then a soft click. A keycard dropped through the vent. Sarah whispered, "You didn't deserve this, I'm sorry." Rylan picked up the card, his eyes burning with determination. He looked toward the cell where the boy sat, silent and small, and for the first time in years, Rylan smiled, not with hope, but with purpose. He whispered under his breath, "Hold on, kid, I'm coming." Because a human who once ran from trouble was now ready to run into fire. And this time, he wasn't running for himself, he was running for the only family he had left. The prison ship moved through deep space like a silent blade, cold, gray, and endless. It carried secrets no one was meant to see. Rylan sat in his dark cell, staring at the tiny keycard in his hand. It was small, barely bigger than his thumb, but it meant hope, and a chance to fix the only mistake he truly cared about. Outside, guards walked the metal corridors, their boots echoing like war drums. Machines hummed, scanning every door, every sound, every breath. Rylan waited, counting the seconds, feeling each one stretch like a lifetime. When the patrol passed, he stood quietly, holding his breath. Then, in one smooth motion, he slid the card into the lock. The door clicked open with a low hiss. For a moment, he stood still. He could barely believe it had worked. Then survival took over. He moved fast, keeping to the shadows, his steps silent. The air smelled of oil and static. Every light flickered, as if the ship itself was nervous. He passed rooms filled with strange devices. Glass pods lined the walls, and inside each one floated a child, pale, glowing, and motionless. Alien was not the only one. Rylan's stomach twisted. These were experiments. Children born from science and fear, each one more proof of how cruel the galaxy could be. He whispered, "Monsters." But he wasn't talking about the children, he was talking about the ones who made them. As he reached the next corridor, he spotted two guards at the end. He grabbed a broken metal pipe from the ground and waited. When they passed, he moved like a ghost. One hit to the neck, one to the jaw. Both fell without a sound. He dragged them behind the wall and took a blaster from one of their belts. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. He followed the sound of machines until he reached a large door marked Genetic Chamber. Through the glass window, he saw Alien, strapped to a glowing table, tubes connected to his arms, draining light from his veins. Scientists stood around him, watching as if they were taking apart a machine, not a child. Rylan's chest burned. He slammed his hand on the door panel, but it didn't open. "Override access required," said a robotic voice. He shot the lock, sparks flying. The door opened, alarms blaring. Guards turned, but Rylan was already moving. He fired twice, the blasts echoing through the room. The scientists screamed and ran, scattering like frightened birds. He rushed to the table, pulling the tubes out of Alien's arms. The boy's eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. "Rylan," he whispered. "I'm here, kid," Rylan said, his voice shaking. "We're getting out." Alien tried to move but winced in pain. Rylan lifted him gently, carrying him toward the exit. But before they reached the door, armed soldiers filled the corridor. Blasters aimed, voices shouting, "Drop the child, human!" Rylan raised his weapon, his jaw tight. "Not a chance," he said. The soldiers opened fire and chaos filled the hall. Rylan ducked behind a console, shielding Alien with his body. Sparks flew, metal burned, and smoke filled the air. Then Alien's voice rose above the noise, calm and clear. "Let me help." Rylan shook his head. "No, you're too weak." But Alien's eyes glowed brighter, light spreading through his veins like fire. The machines in the chamber began to tremble. Sparks leaped from the walls, and the soldiers' weapons turned red hot. One by one, the lights exploded, the air shimmered, and the machines came alive. Mechanical arms broke free, striking the guards. The floor shook as systems overloaded. The station was tearing itself apart under the boy's command. Rylan shielded his face from the light, shouting, "Alien, stop!" The boy's voice echoed, soft but filled with power. "They heard us. They heard everyone." Then, suddenly, the energy died. The room went dark, silent except for the sound of breathing. Rylan looked at Alien, his eyes dim, his body trembling. "You're not a weapon," Rylan said, kneeling beside him. "You're a child, remember that." Alien nodded weakly, a single tear glowing on his cheek. Rylan picked him up and ran, through smoke, through chaos, through falling metal. He found a small hangar and spotted a maintenance shuttle. Without thinking, he threw the boy inside and started the engines. The hangar doors opened to the stars. Alarms screamed as the shuttle blasted out into open space. Behind them, the prison ship exploded in a cloud of light and fire. Rylan gripped the controls tightly, breathing hard. The boy I beside him, sleeping peacefully. For the first time in years, Rylan felt something close to peace. He looked out at the stars and whispered, "We did it, kid." But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. The galaxy had just seen a child destroy one of its darkest secrets, and now every power, every empire would come for them both. Still, as the stars shimmered ahead, Rylan smiled faintly, because for once, he wasn't running away, he was running towards something worth fighting for. The stars looked quiet again, but Rylan knew silence in space was never peace. It was only the breath before another storm. Weeks had passed since they escaped the prison ship. He and Alien had flown far from the trade routes, hiding in forgotten systems where no law reached. Every night, Rylan repaired the old shuttle with scraps. While Alien healed slowly, the boy's glow was fainter now, but steadier, calmer, like a small sun learning to shine again. They had found a home on an abandoned moon. Its surface was cold and silver, covered with strange purple moss. Rylan built a small camp near a crater lake. He made fire from crashed ship fuel and cooked food that barely tasted like food. Still, Alien always smiled. "It's warm," he would say. "It feels safe." And that was enough for Rylan. Sometimes, when Rylan looked up at the stars, he saw flashes, patrols searching, signals echoing through the void. The galaxy hadn't forgotten them. Rumors spread across every system. A story of a human thief who stole the air of Vurath and destroyed a royal facility. Some called him a criminal, others called him a hero, but none knew the truth, that he had simply chosen to care. One night, as the wind hummed through the rocks, Alien sat by the fire. His eyes glowed faintly as he whispered, "They will keep hunting us." Rylan nodded. "I know." The boy looked at him. "Why do you stay, Rylan?" He smiled. "Because someone has to teach you how to lie low." Alien laughed softly, the sound echoing in the empty night. It was the first time Rylan had heard him truly laugh, and it warmed the cold around them. Days turned into months, and the boy grew stronger. He began fixing old machines they found buried under the moon's dust. One by one, he awakened drones and ancient systems, giving life to the dead. Rylan watched in awe as the machines followed Alien like loyal pets. He asked once, "Why do they listen to you?" Alien replied, "Because I asked them kindly." Rylan chuckled, "Wish people worked the same way." But peace never lasted long. One morning, while checking the radar, Rylan saw 3 red blips moving toward the moon, royal signature, heavy-class destroyers. They had found them. He ran to the camp, shouting, "Pack everything! We've got company!" Alien stood calm, the wind stirring his silver hair. "They won't stop," he said quietly. Rylan grabbed his blaster. "Then we make them stop." As the ships descended, the ground trembled. Searchlights swept the surface and a voice boomed through the air. "Rylan, surrender the child and your death will be quick." Rylan looked at Alien. "You hear that, kid?" Alien nodded. "They're afraid." Rylan smirked. "Good. Let's keep it that way." The soldiers landed in black armor, their weapons humming with blue energy. Rylan fired first, taking down 2 before the rest spread out. Explosions lit the night as machines Alien had awakened rose from the ground. Old mining bots and drones turned against the invaders, moving under Alion's silent command. The battlefield glowed with light and smoke. Ryland fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. Every shot, every move was to protect the boy behind him. When the last soldier fell, the lead destroyer fired from orbit. A blinding beam tore through the sky. Ryland shouted, "Get down!" The ground shook violently, throwing him back. He hit the rocks hard, his blaster slipping from his hand. Pain shot through his chest. He looked up through the dust and saw Alien standing in the firelight, his eyes blazing like twin stars. The boy raised his hands, and the energy around him twisted. The beam froze midair, bending backward like a river against its flow. With a burst of light, it shattered the destroyer above. The explosion painted the sky gold and white. And then, silence again. Alien fell to his knees, exhausted, trembling. Ryland crawled to him, pulling the boy into his arms. "You did it, kid," he whispered, coughing. Alien shook his head weakly. "We did." The night passed slowly. When the dawn rose over the crater, the sky was clear. Smoke floated upward like ghosts leaving a battlefield. Ryland sat beside Alien, his breathing shallow but peaceful. The boy touched his hand gently. "You saved me when no one else would." Ryland smiled faintly. "Maybe one day you'll do the same for someone else." The words hung in the air like a promise. Years later, legends would tell of a human protector and a glowing child who united the broken colonies. Some said they vanished into the stars. Others believed they built a new world where humans and aliens lived as one. But those who listened closely to the old transmissions could still hear a voice whispering through static, a human voice saying, "Protect the light, even if it burns you." That was Ryland's legacy, the legacy of a man who found a child in a chest and chose to become more than he ever was, a smuggler who became a savior, and a protector whose courage would echo across the stars, forever.